us another day. All we do is scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Now the way you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, it is Old Man G here, RDS, back again, and I'm joined again, just like last week, with Tom the Journalist, at TomJournalist1, who graciously has come onto the channel, and thank you for coming on again, Tom. Thank you to those who actually tuned in the previous week. We got some really good information from Tom, and thankfully he's been able to come back onto the channel. So, Tom, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, G, and yeah, thanks for having me back on everything as always, and yeah, likewise, and I hope the same with yourself.
Great, cool. So obviously it's almost like we're doing almost like a podcasty sort of format. But guys, obviously for those who are watching, remember, if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, United X, and smash the notification button. Plays Manchester United news and more. Get your questions in. If you have any specific questions, obviously for Tom regarding the transfers, we're going to be talking about obviously the sales and the update regarding that. Obviously, we're still waiting for news coming out of the Glazer family, Sir Jim, and all the updates surrounding that. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the transfer window and the impact that this sale issue is having on the transfer window as well. So obviously make sure that you stay tuned in for that as well, because Tom has got some good insightful information regarding players that we're linked with, who Ten Hag is interested, etc. Before I pass over to him though, let me just quickly look at some comments we've got. Scott Hutchinson says, do not buy from sponsors Adidas, Apollo, Tires, Betfair, DHL, TeamViewer, Tesla, DX Technology, Count 70TV, and do not buy from Old Trafford. Full sell only. And I think that's the sentiment by a lot of Manchester United fans. So just as a kind of as an awesome update, Tom, like where obviously when we spoke last week, you know, the deadline for the third bids was over. The assumption was that this week, Friday, Monday, that we should be hearing murmurings of the Glazers going with a preferred bidder. There's a lot of news that seems to be coming on the weekend regarding, you know, what Sir Jim wants to do, but also that the Qataris aren't going to give up. Can you give us a bit more of an information, a bit of an update to everyone who's watching as to where we are right now?
Yeah, so where we are right now, well, when we went from last week, I gave out the information from what I knew anyway, that a preferred bidder was likely to be chosen either privately and then made publicly, the earliest by Friday, which has just passed, and Monday, which we're on today. The reason why there has been, if you like, not a hiccup, but there's been a bit more of a delay in the process is the Glazer family have wanted to look into all of the alternative options that have been on the table. And what I mean by that is people assume that Sir Jim and Sheikh Jassim are the only two offers that they have as options at the moment, which is either to sell partially or sell fully, which it isn't the case. They have credible offers to sell a minority stake of up to 20% to 25% of the club to a private equity firm, who will then finance them with the funds that they then need to build a new Old Trafford, or to invest in the first team, build Carrington up again, or whatever they want to do with the funds of the partial sale that they would get. But obviously, as a family, they would still maintain the full ownership of it, because they have the higher majority ownership than the New York Stock Exchange shareholders and a minority investor. So the reason why it's taking so long is, when you think about it, Sheikh Jassim has put one option on the table, and is I want 100% of the club. I ain't keeping anybody in. I'm coming in, and that's it. Me and my delegation want in the door. Nobody else is staying after us. So Jim has proposed that he wants to do the same, but for 69%. But that's on a reduced figure of what he can pay right now. He's also put in an option where he buys 50% of the Glazer family shares now, leaving them with 19%, but the Glazer family would probably buy out a shareholder of 1%, just so they round it to a higher number, to round it to 20% that they would hold. That is an option that Sir Jim has put on the table. And also he's put an option on the table where the Glazer family have to negotiate with him over translating the Class B shares to Class A shares, which we got into last week. So the stage that we're at now is the Glazer family are looking over all of the options, and they're looking at every single alternative to one of each of the candidates. And the Rain Group have broke it down for them perfectly. They have put 3 categories in order for the Glazer family of what they believe is serious offers. If the Glazer family decides as a whole that they want to fully sell as all 6 members who have shares in Manchester United, then Sheikh Jassim is who the Rain Group advised them to go and do a deal with. If Joel and Avram want to stay in some capacity, but all 4 of his siblings are in agreement that they want to buy out and they want to get paid out of their shares, the Rain Group will advise them to do the option with Sir Jim at a 50% rate, and then Joel and Avram will have to negotiate with Sir Jim over their Class B to Class A shares translations. If the Glazer family as a whole decide, and Joel and Avram overpower their siblings and say, you ain't going anywhere, you ain't getting paid out billions of pounds if we're going to have to stay and hold the fort, if you like, and have a minority stake as 2 brothers, we want to sell as a whole because we'll get more money as a whole. If they want to pull, if you like, the leadership card and the whole family, then they can do, and then they will say, well, you can look at the investment groups that are still in the process now for minority investment. You have Elliott Management who are still there. You have Carlyle Group. You have Oak Tree Capital. You have SSB Partners, who are all 4 minority investors who have proposed proposals to buy a minority stake, but also provide further financing to a candidate in the process, which is looking a lot more unlikely now, given how far we are in and there's been no partnerships made. But also, it looks very furnishing in terms of the Glazer family have an option there where they can be paid out for a percentage of the club, but they can also get further money over the top because they have a partner to do business with who can fund them. And some of these private equity firms for minority investment have assets worth hundreds of billions of pounds. You know, you take, for example, Elliott Management. I think they have assets in the region of $200 million US, which is, you know, a figure of you know, dreams and imaginations of the amount of money that you can have as a firm or a bank that you hold in assets, but you can also use to then leverage onto football clubs or buy a percentage into. Hence, Clear Lake Capital doing that with Chelsea Football Club when they bought it, and then they built a partnership with Todd Bowley in the end, and then they've strived as an ownership group, and then they've taken control of Chelsea. You know, the same thing can happen here. The only thing would be that the investors would come in with the financing for a minority stake, but the Glazer family would just stay at the seat. So the point now is the Glazer family want more time to assess over all of the options, which they want to look at all the options as a family, and then they want to debrief as a family. They want to talk just as a family. They don't want the Rain Group. They don't want their financial advisors in the Rothschilds group to be advising them. They just want to speak as a group and as a family of what they want to do with Manchester United Football Club. And then from there, they will make the option of, right, you know, the advisors of the Rain Group, we have come to the conclusion the family want to fully sell. Then they would advise Sheikh Jassim. If Joel and Avram, right, the rest of them, they definitely want out. We're prepared to let them get out, but we want to stay. They'll advise Sir Jim. If all of the family are in agreement that they can get more money later down the line, then Joel and Avram, as the heads of the family, will go to the Rain Group and state we want to stay as a full group of family with our percentage. Right, we're going to pick a minority investor who we believe suits you best out of all 4 options that are there that I've just mentioned. And you go from there, you negotiate, and then you negotiate the terms of a deal.
But Tom, the frustrating thing I think we'll have. Sorry, before I actually I'm just quickly just read some comments that's outstanding. Cop Randy says Jim Ratboy and Glaze out. We want Qatar only. JC says all the talk about a new striker needed when it should be strikers time too. Well, we'll talk about that, I think, later. Mo says, well, says Glazer's out. You know, what I don't quite understand is why there's still this kind of we don't know, like why is it that's yes, of course I know they need to know the interest, and the value of United, etc. But what I don't quite understand is at this stage, at this level, why is there still this kind of uncertainty amongst the Glazers that they don't know in unison what it is that whether they all want to sell the player, whether Avram and Joe want to still be there, etc. Why is there still this kind of indecision that we're seeing when it should have been when it should be fairly straightforward?
It is fairly straightforward if you're dealing with a couple of pounds, but to these guys, when they bought something for £700 million in a leveraged buyout and they've only ever put £200 million of their own money in as a family, of six of them, when the father in Malcolm Glazer died, when they only put £200 million in, I mean, you've got to think about the financial gains here. Like, if they get the £6 billion that they want, they have made a whopping colossal profit of £5.8 billion on an asset that they've only ever had to put millions in when they've managed to get billions for it. Like, that's a successful, if you like, business model and transaction for them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you look at Joel and Avram, especially as to what they want to do as a group and as a collective. They're the people who hold the answers to a lot of people's minds. And this is why when journalists state that, Sir Jim's in the hot seat, or, Qatar's got the money to blow people out the water, like, it's not as simple as that, because unless Joel and Avram in their own minds make a decision, then you can never state that somebody's a favourite or somebody's got more money than the other to do whatever. Like, it does, those contextual, reasons, they don't matter. What matters is what Joel and Avram think. And unless you're a brain surgeon or you're a mind reader, then, boy, you ain't going to know what they're thinking at the end of the day. So the reason why there's the delay is the Glazer family want to assess all the options. And when you think about it, yes, people will say, well, the final bids went in on the 28th of April. That's fine. But when you think about it, you've got SHEIKH JASSIM, whose offer is probably the most simplest to read. It's a figure, it's proof of funds, and it's the 9-2 Foundation. That's all that you have to read about that offer. Sir Jim has put 3 different proposals on the table. Full buyout at 69% for a reduced fee, 50% of the club here and now with the Glazer family and not having control, potentially, or 50% now, but he wants to negotiate the control with the Glazer family. And either or of those offers can be liable in terms of the debt would still go on to Manchester United because he's having to finance it. That's how those options work for the final 2 that I've just said. But then you have the minority options, who all 4 of those parties that I previously mentioned will have a different percentage. So then the Glazer family have to work out the numbers along with the Rain Group to see if it better suits them to go down that channel or not. Then they've also got to look at if a group want to provide financing for a stadium, for whatever, and offer extra financing there. But if they don't, then that's the problem of the whole resolve. And when you're dealing with billions of pounds, these people want to make sure that everything is in order, because overall, the Glazer family if they do decide to sell Manchester United, it will be for the top dollar price. It will be a world record figure for a sporting club, and in its own right, it probably should be for the size of Manchester United. But they know this. That's how you advertise something that's so, veined into a lot of people's minds and interests. You walk down the street, you say, you show the Manchester United badge, you just take the name out of it. Like, people will know what it is. At the end of the day, it's a recognisable asset, and these guys are utilising that in terms of, the way the Glazer family will look at it is, well, we've never done anything, quick before. We've never sacked a manager before. We've never hired someone. We've never signed players rapidly, at rapid pace. So why would we want to sell rapidly when all of those previous things that I just mentioned, they didn't benefit them. They just benefited the club. But in this case, with the latter point, where it benefits them, the financials of what package they would get. So at the end of the day, you're going to take your time. You're going to assess. If this was as simple as Joe Glazer was the only owner of Manchester United, and it's only one person who has to make their mind up, you might have had a decision already. But because there's 6 members who all have different percentages, it's a problem, because you have 6 different opinions of what you want to do. So it's all in many cases, it's a case of the Glazer family want more time. In the same way that Sir Jim and Sheikh Jassim wanted more time when they deferred on their second bids and they wanted more time to go over the options of what they wanted to bid. So the Glazer family are just exercising their right as the owners to say, we want a bit longer, give us a bit longer, we're assessing all the options and we'll get back to you. But they have a legal requirement to get back to a group by the end of the month anyway. So there is obligations as to how long they can have. But in other terms, it will be smoothed out upon when the Glazer family look at the options, assess as a family, put the decision to reign, and then it will be made publicly common as to what option they've gone down.
Fair enough. Thanks, Tom. Like I said, for those who are watching, obviously, first watching, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and if you have any questions for Tom, let us know in the chat. There was obviously some. I'm just going by just obviously the news was in the press, over the weekend as we're waiting for this. That I think it was kind of coming out of Sky, but there was a sort of idea that Sheikh Jassim, the Qataris, were kind of sort of going to almost contact the Glazers directly, almost bypass Rain. There was also talk just about the fact that if potentially the Qataris almost are upping their offer because they don't want to kind of lose face type, but we want to secure Manchester United at any cost type of sort of thing. Is there any kind of, do you know if there's any kind of truth to that? Is there, or was that just paper talk? What have you?
Well, you can always go rogue when it comes to something that you have billions of pounds in your possession of, and you have somebody who's willing to sell. So, like I said before, when I reiterated on the previous streams that we've done, if the Glazer family choose a preferred bidder, don't expect that that's just going to be it. Because if somebody wants something as badly as they say that they do, and the way I would look at it anyway, from Sheikh Jassim's point of view, is I don't honestly think he would have come this far if he didn't, A, believe he was going to be successful in getting a deal, or B, if he wasn't determined to get it at whatever he wanted. Because he's known for weeks and months even what the Glazer family's stance are in terms of the price, £6 billion. All of these parties know that. Sir Jim has known this for the longest amount of time. But in other words, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the best case scenario of what you can use as an example. The Chelsea option, well, you had Todd Bowley, who was selected already as a preferred bidder. Sir Jim Ratcliffe came out of nowhere. He had been, his spokesperson had been asked for weeks and weeks on end about, are you interested in buying Chelsea Football Club? You're a season ticket holder. Your offices at the time was registered in London. You had a lot of business interests there. Are you interested in buying Chelsea? And for weeks, the news was coming out of his spokesperson at Ineos to say, no, Sir Jim's not interested in buying Chelsea. He thinks that Premier League clubs are overvalued. But then, long and behold, Todd Bowley was selected as preferred bidder. 24 hours later, Sir Jim Ratcliffe came out in a biography stance and said, I want in. I've got £4.25 billion. That's my offer. I'll buy the club for £2.5 billion right now, which was the sale price that the club actually went for. And then I would add a pledged investment of £1.75 billion on top of what I'm paying for it already. And because it got to the stage that it did, and that was a process at the time, and there was a time scale on Chelsea needed to be sold, then there was an emphasis on, well, we selected Todd Bowley, we can't accept your offer. We'll look at it, but we've already chosen somebody else. You're too late to the party. If you wanted it that badly, you should have come in the process when it was available and open. In this case, with Sheikh Jassim, you could have Sir Jim Ratcliffe chosen as a preferred bidder. You could have a minority group chosen as a preferred option. It doesn't mean that Sheikh Jassim cannot just ignore the whole process and go rogue, if you like, and go to the Glazer family and say, look, I'll give you the option of what you want. I'll give you the money that you want. But you've got to look at the process and think, the Glazer family have never set a hard deadline, and the Rain Group have never set a hard deadline where they shut everybody out. And that is for a reason, because at the end of the day, the Glazer family know that there is hundreds of billionaires.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tom. Mo has a question, so I've just seen your question, Mo. In the minority investment case, how much of the money raised will go into the club versus their pockets, and what guarantees are in place to ensure that?
So in terms of the minority groups, what they would do is they would cut off a percentage. So they have had to value, because the Glazer family want to, the price that they want for Manchester United, they are valuing it on what they believe Manchester United would be worth if they owned 100% of it.
Yeah.
So if they owned 100% of Man United, they believe it's worth £6 billion. For an investment group, they would look at the exact same thing that the Glazer family have done. We will value it at what we believe it is. And a lot of investment groups would probably value Man United in the region of about £4 to £4.5 billion if we're going down that model, which is about 5.5 billion US dollars in that region. So overall, they would look at that and then think, right, well, let's cut it down to the percentage that we want to buy in at. So if that's 20%, right, we'll give you, Joel, Avram, the rest of the family, we'll give you £1.25 billion, or we'll give you £1 billion for 20%. But upon that 20%, because they don't have any controlling rights over the, like we said before, with the Class A and the Class B shares, because they're buying as, if you like, as a silent partner, they just have a stake in Man United. So they cannot metaphorically make any money out of Manchester United unless they negotiate terms with the Glazer family for them to do so, which if they're going to pay £1 billion to buy in, they're not just going to hand over £1 billion to just anybody. They're going to want to have some sort of clauses and terms as to,
yes, that's
well,
what I was thinking,
if you use that money to build a stadium, we want 15% of the revenues that it generates, or we want a cut of the Adidas sponsorship deal money that you make, or something like that. You're going to negotiate terms, and that's how it would work. So the guarantees that are in place, there isn't any guarantees set in stone, but a lot of investment firms will look at it and want to negotiate and say, well, that's what we want ultimately. And overall, until you get to that medium point with the Glazer family, they are going to be stingent and they are going to be hard to negotiate any sort of terms with, whether it be a sale price, an investment price, or a pledged investment. They're going to be stringent in what they're going to negotiate with, because they can always just go through this process and say, look, we've been here for 5 months, we've looked over all the options, nothing satisfies us, not a full option, not a partial option, not a minority option. We're pulling out, we'll stick with what we've got. And they could do that ultimately. They could just do that. There's no reason, there's no obligation as to why they couldn't. Just sack the whole process off. Of course, there'd be a lot of fan outrage, but they've been here for 18 years and they're still here now. That's what they would say. It's not exactly somebody's come in or some power or governments took us out of place like Roman Abramovich was and had all our assets frozen. That's never going to happen to the Glazer family. So they can sit, the directors and the owners of Manchester United for as long as they want, until somebody's prepared to give them what they want in terms of, like I say, a full option to sell, partial, or minority. But overall, the money that is raised or generated to go into Manchester United as a minority investment, there would be some commitments to it. For example, a group, let's take the Elliott Management Group, for example, if they were to invest £1 billion in Man United, they would say, we would want that £1 billion to be invested in building a new stadium. But for that, we want to buy 20% of Manchester United. Upon pledging another £1 billion, that could be, say, £2 billion, we want to build a new stadium. But we want to have, say, 15-20% of what that stadium makes as being a 20% majority holder of the whole club itself. Therefore, the Glazer family then have to, if you like, follow due process in terms of, well, we've still got the majority shareholding, we're still in control, but we're just getting more money coming in. But it's not our money that we're having to use. We're using basically using a bank loan to bankroll a new stadium, ultimately. So that's what that process means if you go down that road.
Fair enough. Thank you for the detailed and thorough explanation. So I hope that answers your question, Mo. But this is why I really appreciate Tom coming on, because I think a lot of the stuff that we see in the media on Twitter and various things is very, very speculative, and it doesn't really. You don't really get to the bone of what each of all these offers and decisions mean. Understandably, because a lot of people obviously want the Glazers gone, finished. They just want them out, and they want a new change, which is fair enough. And people perceive that Qatar is obviously the way to do that with the least complications. But the reality is that as you said, there are other alternatives, other options that are on the table that the Glazers are assessing, and that could be whether rightly or wrongly put upon the club. So just I think maybe one last obviously question just about the sale before we maybe dive into some sort of transfer related sort of stuff. So you spoke last week sort of about how you didn't really see the logic behind what Sir Jim is trying to do regarding the United States because of if you remind me, the Glazers probably wanting to still keep some sort of control over the club.
Yeah.
And Sir Jim would obviously have to, Sir Jim would have to negotiate or wrestle that sort of control away from them. Do you think that I'm going to put it this way? Do you think that how can I put it? Yeah. Do you think that? I think in the end, I guess maybe that the Glazers will just find it easier to go down the Qatari route, or do you think that it's just that it just could be anything at this point?
At this point, right now, all options are on the table. Like it's a case of you're at the table with billionaires who are playing poker. The Qataris have put their hand on the table and they've said, "This is our offer. That's it. Take it or leave it." But we're open to negotiate that offer if you accept us. So Jim is the exact same thing. I put my cards on the table along with the backing I have from Ineos, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs. This is my offer, but I've got multiple options of different options as to what I can do. And with what you've just said with Sir Jim in terms of his second option, which a lot of people are saying is the snaky option, where he wants to buy 50%, keep the Glazers in terms of Joel and Avram in as a minority shareholders at 20%, but he can have 50% of Manchester United and still not control the club. Yeah. So Jim, as far as I'm aware anyway, he will not buy 50% of Manchester United if he does not have control of it. He's not going to buy in if he doesn't control the club. I.e., he's already made a plan. Like people talk about what Qatar are doing in terms of we'll invest in a new stadium, we'll clear the debt, we'll invest in Carrington, the local community. So Jim has already chosen who he wants to run Manchester United Football Club if he was to be successful. Initially, he would come in, he would be the acting CEO until he appoints a permanent CEO, which Sir Dave Brailsford, for example, is an option which he could use if he wanted to go down the Ineos and the cycling sort of route, which has at least a sporting background. And he already has decided on his technical director or director of football. He likes Paul Mitchell. So in terms of Sir Jim and the options, for him to put those two people in place, if that's what he wanted to do, he needs the control and the authority to do it. And by doing so, he needs to have the controlling shares and over the asset, which are the Class B shares that the Glazer family currently own right now. But the Class A shares, that's where the problem is. When Sir Jim makes the offer, he's offering 50%, but I want control of Class B shares. You take the clause out of it. You, Joel and Avram, will sit on the Class A shares, but 20% worth of them. And then later down the line, I will try and buy you out. And I know there's been a lot of briefings around Sir Jim Ratcliffe will buy the Glazer family out in 3 years' time, or what ifs and buts in terms of that sort of category and everything. But overall, in terms of Sir Jim and Joel, they're going to look at it from the perspective of, well, we've got something still to give in this case.
No, that's somebody still there?
That's the bottom line of it, anyway.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Tom. I appreciate I'm looking at the time, so obviously I know your time is short. So, but thank you for all the information, Tom. And obviously, guys, if you have any questions for those who are listening, make sure you like the video as well and subscribe if you're new. And get those questions in. If you have any questions for Tom on the panel, just because it's not going to be for a while, get those questions in and let us know. So let's just quickly just go, because obviously you did give me some news, because as we know, this whole takeover process is having an effect on the transfers and what Ten Hag can do and who we're going to go for. Can you just give us a little bit of information about, what are the priorities for Ten Hag and his team this summer transfer window and some of the players that we're looking at? So actually, before I even go to Phaser plays says, so Jim just needs to pull out if he really wants to save Manchester United's future. Well, he's a businessman. He's probably not going to do that, Phaser plays, but fair enough. And I think looking at the poll, sorry, I know I did put a poll saying who so far it's a massive 91% for Sir Jim. Sorry, for Sheikh Jassim, and then only a 9% for Sir Jim. So fair enough. But yeah, sorry. Go on, Tom.
Yeah, well, in terms of priority sort of targets from obviously what I briefed a lot of people around it in terms of who Erik ten Hag prefers as his priority targets, what he sees as necessities. Well, he's been in close consultation with the current director of football right now in terms of John Murtough over assessing what the target should be for the summer transfer window and what he initially wanted. Prior to coming to Manchester United Football Club, Erik ten Hag looked at the Manchester United squad and he assessed where he needed to prioritise. And he came to Manchester United and he said, I need to prioritise the defensive structure of this team. I.e., he brought in Lisandro Martinez, he brought in a structural ball control in terms of Christian Eriksen, who can, if you like, control the game. And then he brought in Casemiro, who is more of a defensive style player who can shield the back line or the centre halves. He brought in that structure because that's the necessity that he believed Manchester United struggled with the most, was that they conceded far too many goals in games. And if you be honest, the defensive record for Manchester United this season and the way the defensive back line has performed, it has been a lot better than it had been in the previous season, for example, where Man United were going away to Brighton, losing 4-0. They were going away to Everton, losing games. They were going all over the place, home or away, and they were losing, even 5-0 Liverpool. The games were ridiculous wherever they was going in terms of leaking goals. So he came in and initially assessed that. He looked at all of the options and he looked at players such as David De Gea as the goalkeeper, and he said, Dave, you're a long-serving goalkeeper at this football club. I am going to give you the opportunity, along with the whole squad. He looked at players like Anthony Martial, who a lot of people have been vocal about in terms of they want him sold, they want him gone. He looked at all these players and he said, I'm going to give you a fresh start in my Manchester United. You listen to my authority, you listen to my methods, and you'll play my style of play. And if you can fit into those three categories that I state, then I will keep you long-term at Manchester United. If not, then you will be moved on in terms of either I won't pick you or you will be sold or loaned out, whatever it needs to be in terms of a personal player's development. You look at Erik ten Hag in terms of the plans that he wants coming into the summer transfer window, regardless of the budget, regardless of what he has to work with, he wants a number 9. That is the biggest necessity that he wants. He looked at this Manchester United squad and he says, I have a player who can play in every single position but striker at this moment in time. I have a lone striker in Wout Weghorst who isn't really a goal scorer. He isn't a goal threat. He isn't a striker. He's not Man United level striker anyway. You have Anthony Martial, who's missing in action. He doesn't play a lot of games, but he also doesn't see him as his profile of number 9 that he wants. Erik ten Hag wants a complete number 9. He wants somebody who can be an 18-yard box striker. He wants somebody who can link up the play, who can pick a pass to set a counter-attack or, if they need to drop deep, play the style of football. And ultimately, Erik ten Hag...
So someone like Harry Kane, essentially.
Harry Kane. Yeah, Harry Kane is Erik ten Hag's desired player that he wants in that position. He sees the age as no problem at all as to the profile because he believes a complete player at the age of 29, 30 years old is better than somebody who's raw, ragged at 23, 24 years old, you're going to have to develop into that profile of player like Harry Kane for 3-4 years. And if you're paying a hefty fee for a younger profile of player, if you're paying upwards of 60, 80 million pounds, you're going to want somebody who's ready-made. You're going to want here and now. And Manchester United desire here and now. You can forget a 3-4 year project to develop a player. And Erik ten Hag knows this. That's why he brought in players like Casemiro. Experience. That's why you bring in players like Lisandro Martinez. Trusted players that he's worked with in profiles. So Harry Kane is his desired number 9, but he understands, and John Murtough has obviously discussed this with him privately and medicinally as well. Daniel Levy is going to be really hard to negotiate for that player. Erik ten Hag says, I want him at all costs, but we will not pay over the odds for him. We will pay a fair price, but we will not pay a ridiculous price. And a fair price in Erik ten Hag's mind that he agrees with John Murtough is £80 million. That is what they believe is a fair price for somebody who's at that age, who's that profile of a number 9, but also is running into the last year of his contract. If Tottenham and Daniel Levy want more than that, they will look at the alternative options, because they will look at the options that they have on the table in terms of the club and Erik ten Hag, and viewing that they like Victor Osimhen as a player, regardless of the price tag. They think he's worth the money that you would have to pay over the odds for. Benjamin Sesko as well, young Red Bull striker who's been in the Red Bull Sporting project, from Salzburg to Leipzig now. They believe he's a brilliant young future player who you can develop into it. They also like Randal Kolo-Muani from Eintracht Frankfurt, who, if Erik ten Hag was going to choose an alternative out of those in terms of the value, the development and the progression of a player, Randal Kolo-Muani would be his option. He believes he can press from the front. He believes he can add, if you like, the goal-scoring clinicalness to that player, but he already believes that he possesses the ability to play back to goal, to link up play, to build partnerships with players like Marcus Rashford, for example. He believes that he can do that already. The only thing he needs is to be an 18-yard box striker, which, for a coach like Erik ten Hag, if you want to have an 18-yard box striker, all you need to do is coach them where to be in certain areas when a player has the ball. And if you've got players who can put the ball in the box, for example, Bruno Fernandes, Antony, stick a cross in, like Luke Shaw, Kolo-Muani or Harry Kane, whomever, they're going to be an 18-yard box striker and they're going to score 20-plus goals for your club per season. It's factual and guaranteed from the chances Man United create. So ultimately, Harry Kane, in terms of a striker, is the priority target.
Yeah.
But if they can't get the priority target, they are prepared to look at the alternative options. And Erik ten Hag's preferred alternative option would be Randal Kolo-Muani.
Fine. And obviously, just on the transfers, the striking of United getting a number 9 striker is obviously Ten Hag's most important. That's the most important thing. That's his priority right now. But in other positions like centre mid, defensive or defense, or other positions that Ten Hag is also wanting to reinforce in the summer. And if so, like what players or what is the United scouting department thinking about?
Well, in terms of the other areas, his secondary priority is been very vocal about it in terms of with his coaching staff as well, who've stated to him that we need more midfield reinforcements. We need players of a certain profile who, A, can keep the ball under pressure, but also can turn on the ball. They can beat a pressing medicinal player if you have to play against a high pressing team. For example, which a lot of the players struggled with in the second half at Anfield against Liverpool. A lot of that midfield, even some of the world's best, in people would say with Casemiro. Casemiro's not a player who's going to turn the ball and is going to drive the ball up the field for you. He's not that player. And that profile that I've just stated there, a lot of people will state, well, Frankie de Jong. Erik ten Hag goes to bed thinking about having Frankie de Jong in his Manchester United team. He must do, because he was the player that he desired the most from last summer. And Manchester United negotiated for 3 months, and they actually got a deal agreed. But the only problem that happened with the Frankie de Jong deal was he didn't want to leave. That was the problem. You had a club that were willing to sell, you had a club that were willing to buy, but you had a player that didn't want to go. And that is the biggest problem in the stumbling block. He was owed money, yes, you can say what you want, but he desires that club as his dream club. And sometimes you can never take somebody's dream away from them once they've got it. And Erik ten Hag, in that case, he knows this, and he said, well, I look at the other alternative options in terms of the market. He likes a profile and he wants a number 8, number 6 kind of player. In that sort of profile, you would look at players such as a James Maddison, a Moses Caicedo, for example, Romelu Lavia, for example. These kind of profile of players that he would want to look at. But ultimately and overall, Erik ten Hag's going to look at the midfielders and think, I want somebody who A, can beat a press, B, can be versatile because they don't have a lot of midfield options, who are of a great deal of quality, and C, I need somebody who's actually going to be reliable for me. I want players who are going to run through brick walls for me, not going to come to the Premier League and be swallowed up by the physicality of it, the atmosphere of it. And that's why Erik ten Hag, when he looks at the number 9, when he looks at the midfield especially, he looks for players of whom are not going to be bullied off the ball. They're not going to be phased if somebody 2-foots them. They're not going to be phased if you've got to cling for a header and a goalkeeper's going to come for you. You're not going to be phased if somebody's running at 100 miles an hour at you and flips you in the air and does 4 flips. You need players who are going to run through brick walls for you at the end of the day, and that's what he wants in certain players. And the profiles are there and the aspects are there. So a midfielder would be his second priority.
Okay.
Depending on how the budget stretches, he really desires another centre back because he looks at what has happened where he's had his 2 mainstream centre backs in Rafael Varane and Lisandro Martinez be taken away from the team. You can say that he's, if you like, come up with a not a master plan, but he's come up with a backup plan in terms of he's playing Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back along with Victor Lindelof. But by doing so, Manchester United don't have their desired left-side channel. And what I mean by that is, ever since you look at Marcus Rashford when he was that brilliant run of form, he had Luke Shaw on the left-hand side with him. As soon as Luke Shaw's had to play left-sided centre-back and you take that option away from Marcus Rashford, he's not been as prolific in front of goal. He's not been as diagonal because he's not with his preferred partner. When you're playing with wingers, centre-backs or whatever, midfielders, you always have a partner. You always have somebody who you work with, you desire to work with. And he is missing that in Marcus Rashford's case. So he looks at it now where if he had this same problem next season, he wants a player that he can rely upon in terms of, I know he's my go-to guy.
Yeah.
He likes Victor Lindelof as an alternative option, but Victor Lindelof might not stay at Manchester United for his own personal belief that he believes he deserves to play first-team football somewhere else. He might believe that, and then that's why he might want to go. Harry Maguire could be the exact same reason for that. But in terms of the profiles that he looks for in that centre-back area, he does like a couple of names. He likes Antonio Silva of Benfica, the 19-year-old centre-back. He likes him. He thinks he's a brilliant centre-half. Kim Min-jae as well, of Napoli. These players are profiles of players that he does like. Jurrien Timber as well, who's an option. Can play centre-back, can play right-back. And he wants a right-back position as well if the budget would stretch. But because there's no determination on the budget, that's where the problem is at this moment in time. And ultimately, you can say what you want. People can have their own opinions about what's happening with David De Gea at the moment in time and things. But the way that Ten Hag looks at it is, well, if I've got to keep David De Gea in the short term, it's not a bad option because he's always been reliable to Manchester United when he's needed to be called upon. But in the short term, he's going to have to make do if the budget doesn't stretch far for a goalkeeper, for a right back.
So I was jump to Tom, I don't know when ending. So actually, before I even ask my question, Robert Bailey says United sell be unsold to Xmas with a bunch of Americans don't know what the next day is. Well, that hopefully doesn't come to that. Really, really hope it doesn't. Do you think that just as a brief summary, because I know we're actually at 1:30. Actually, probably going to round up soon. Do you think that because I'm hearing a lot about the budget and the amount of money that's available and all this, etc., like how can we even know what the United's budget is, or even what we're doing, or who Ten Hag's options are if there isn't clear ownership? Or is it that there's a situation that the Glazers are sort of business as usual, are actually potentially going out to seek certain targets and certain things? Like how's that? So what's confusing a lot of the time is that you hear players the United are linked with, but at the same time it's like, but how can we negotiate? How can we even go and speak to these players when the ownership situation is still not resolved? Like what's supposed to be about that?
Well, in terms of Erik ten Hag, in terms of what he knows about the budget, in Erik ten Hag, sort of the voices that's coming from his agency is he's expecting Manchester United to be sold. He's expecting to have a new owner, somebody new to work with, to operate with, whether they want to bring in their own director of football straight away, consultate with John Mercer, whatever. He is expecting to have fresh money coming into Manchester United, whether it be from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the Qataris. He's expecting one of those two parties to be his boss. That's what he's expecting. And by doing so, the problem with Manchester United face right now, and we discussed it on the previous stream, because Manchester United are not a great selling club, FFP is going to swallow up a lot of Manchester United's budget this season in terms of the summer budget as to what they can spend. And why I say that is because Manchester United don't sell a lot of their players for profits. And because of that, when you don't sell a lot of the players for your profits, the financial implications of when you pay £90 million for Paul Pogba and then let him go for free, when you pay over the odds for Jadon Sancho, who's not turned out to be the player that maybe you would have thought, when you're paying these price tags, like, you're making losses, but you're also hampering your future windows, your future transfers that you want to do. So if it stayed as it is now, and the Glazer family was still in control, and they got nobody, they pulled out the whole process, Manchester United would have around £150 million to spend. That is without selling players. But that is minimum. That's maximum. That's all that they have there on the table. In terms of if they sold players, that will then cover them for future windows. It won't cover them for this window. It will cover them for, say, if they wanted to invest in a player in January, if they wanted to invest in the summer. That's what it would cost in terms of that. If the Qataris were to come into Manchester United, personally, I would expect, under the FFP laws and what they can put in because they are a new owner, you would probably have about £200 million to spend if the Qataris were to come in. So, Jim, you're probably talking the same thing.
Okay.
Like, they can come in and put £200 million in, but that's it. Because even though they're a new owner, they are still obligated by FFP because the old ownership have run it how they have run it. But if then you have Manchester United can do, if you like, what Chelsea have done for so many years, where you sell 2 or 3 players per window for £25 million each, you round up to about £50-60 million, per window or something for a summer. Suddenly that adds up, and then over 3 seasons, you've sold players in the region of £180 million. That's £200 million, near enough £200 million over 3 summer windows, which then you can reinvest in your team. From what you sell and what you make is what you can then put in. That's how FFP works, unfortunately. Now, it didn't before when, say, Manchester City were bought by Sheikh Mansour. You can log the club by £1 billion, at the click of a finger, and it didn't matter. Now, because the competitiveness of how the clubs work, that's unfortunately how the reasoning works for it. So overall, if it stayed as it is now, and the Glazer family were to still see control of Manchester United, the money to buy players is £150 million. If it was Qatar or Sajim, they would probably be able to invest a little more because they're coming in fresh. But they won't be. You won't hear Qatar coming £300-400 million war chest, or Sajim wants to buy the Man United fans back on side. Here's a goodwill gesture. We'll do a top bowl. Spend £600 billion in 6 months. Like, it's not going to happen at the end of the day.
Fair enough. Thanks, Thomas. And I guess one final again, because I think you have to head off now, don't you, Tom? If I'm correct.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so just one final question, guys. For those obviously watching, make sure you like the video. Obviously, about 40-50 people still watching. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, so we can get this channel over to 4K. I think we're approaching 4K. So please subscribe the video. We've got and show the channel some love. So final question, because Tom has to head off, and thank you so much, Tom, for giving us an update. Hopefully you'll be able to come back on when we get a bit more news regarding the whole transfer debate, transfer news, but also sales news as well. What do you how can I put this way? With Ten Hag and obviously what we've seen like so far, how do you see how I guess it's a 2-part question, is how do you see this summer transfer window going under Ten Hag? It's the first question. And the second question, how easy do you think the transition will be with Ten Hag under a Sheikh Jassim or a Sajim Ratcliffe / Glazer? How do you see that working?
Well, I'll answer the first question first. In terms of what do I think you can expect for the summer window, Erik ten Hag is expecting to get his priority target, and at least at minimum his second option that he wants in terms of a midfielder. He would be satisfied if he come into this window and he got the desired number 9 that he wanted, and he got a desired number 2 option in terms of the midfielder that he wants. If he got those 2 options, he would be minimally satisfied. But if he got a lot of what he wanted, say you put another centre-back in, he would be more than satisfied. 3 quality world-class players coming in for price tags in the region of £50 million each or more, depending on who you go for and what profile of clubs wanting what prices, like, he would see that as good value. He's brought in 3 quality players that will either provide cover in terms of buying in another centre-back, a midfielder who would bring competition but also bring quality, and you'd buy in the number 9 that you don't have at this moment in time at all. So you've brought in and you've made, if you like, 3 big investments, but they're investments that are desired upon because it improves the team and it improves the quality. But to answer the last question, in terms of a transition over, regardless of who the owner is, it should be, if you like, business as usual, because to Jim and Qatar, the briefings that they've given to a lot of journalists has been Erik ten Hag is the right man for Manchester United. They believe that. If it's Sir Jim who comes in, he will want to bring his own director of football in Paul Mitchell. That is no understudy. That is no, that is a fact. He will want to bring in his own director of football. The Qataris will do the exact same thing. They will not. They will work with Sir Jim. They will work with Sir Richard Arnold and John Murtough in the short term, because you can't just pull somebody out of a position, put somebody in, and then expect to know who the best players are in the world. It's not going to work like that. They might have to do what Todd Bowley did in terms of the people that are there, work with them for the summer window, or take control yourself and do it, which a lot of people would disagree with because of how things can transpire in that way, and you buy the wrong profile of players for the manager. But if an owner comes in, whether it be Sheikh Jassim or Sir Jim, they want to work with Erik ten Hag. They want to. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's how they will see it, and ten Hag is viewing it the same thing. But he believes, and a lot of the owner groups that are looking to buy into Manchester United, they view it as, at this stage and at this point right now, Manchester United is on the right projection on the field. But they need further investment into the team, in the exact same way that the women's team need further investment to challenge in terms of the teams that they're playing in their league. The same thing with the stadium needs improving, vice versa. So any of the owners are looking at it and thinking, Erik ten Hag, he's the man for us right now. Later down the line, you could have a position where Todd Bowley did what he did. He come in, he said, Thomas Tuchel's our guy. We're going to stick with him. We're going to work with him. And, 3-4 months into a season, they laid him off. And they said, look, it's not worked out. We've invested £300 million in you, and we're no better off than where we were the previous season, other than we're scramping around in a European battle to just even get into Europe as opposed to the Champions League. So you could have that position there with Erik ten Hag, but I'd say it's very faint that one of these owners would come in and say, Erik ten Hag, here's your P45. And at the end of the day, when these groups state that they are Manchester United supporters, Sir Jim says he's a Boyd United fan, Sheikh Jassim says the same thing. If you're saying that, then you must.
So I know it's a question. How true is that really? I mean, are they really only saying that to sort of just to garner sort of favor with you're Boyd United fans, but really truly you are. I mean, I guess it's better than the Glazers never came out and said, "Oh yes, we followed United since we're kids," and so there was always business play, So I guess it is an improvement that you've got two owners who at least appear to be interested in football and appear to be, have an interest in Manchester United. But do you think that's just all pomp and circumstance, or because at the end of the day we're businessmen first and over the club?
I think in terms of the Qataris case, in terms of Sheikh Jassim's case, I do think it is factual. I do think he is a boyhood Manchester United fan, because you could have created any company name. You could have said it's the Sheikh Jassim Foundation, it's the Qatari Delegation Foundation, but he's named it after one of the most historical traditions in Manchester United history, which is the class of '92. He's put a brand, he's put a name attachment to it, and in 1992, that is the year when he's prescribed as him being 10 years old. That's the year when he states that he first became a Manchester United fan, when he was 10 years old in 1992. And at that point in time, he looks at that as a reflection point in his life as to that's the day I became a Manchester United fan. Those football players made me become a Manchester United fan. And that manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, built a legacy of Manchester United and took it over from Sir Matt Busby. And by doing so, that's where he, if you like, can back up his argument. So Jim, I'll be honest with you, he's took a lot of flack from the fan base, not just because of this proposal, but he has been a Chelsea season ticket holder. His family around him, his family around him are all Chelsea season ticket holders. They all go to Stamford Bridge. They have been previously, until he moved and resided fully out in Monaco, which is a 20-minute helicopter ride, as I presumed before, from Nice, which is the football club that he currently owns. So you can see where I'm coming from in terms of one owner has actually put something in place where it has a connection with the club. So Jim, in this case, he's never been pictured at Old Trafford. Like, a lot of people see it as the only time he was ever at Old Trafford was when he actually visited there with his delegation. That's the only time he's ever been spotted there. Apart from that, but he claims anyway that he was in the Camp Nou in '99 when, Solskjaer and Sheringham did what they did. He claims to have watched that in person himself, but we've not had any factual information. He wasn't a guest of honour. He didn't have any of those titles or attachments then. So the verification to do that is hard to do. Whereas with Sheikh Jassim in this case, you can verify it because it's factual knowledge. The 92 Foundation is a company. It's named. It's a namesake for something else. Whereas to Jim, it's almost as if Sheikh Jassim's named something, built something, and can back it up because it's got some contextual knowledge to it. But Sir Jim's almost as if, oh, well, take my word for it. You tell me a billionaire doesn't go to Old Trafford and take a few pictures, and he can't be leaked via his spokesperson or something like. I think he pretty much can.
That's a fact. Let me just quickly read some comments and I'll quickly comment on the poll, and then we'll round things up. Thank you again so much, Tom, for coming on the show. And I appreciate we've got a bit over time as well. JC says United can't buy just one striker and hope he's never injured or suspended, hence 2 strikers. And I agree with that. I agree, especially if Ten Hag decides to let Martial go. Weghorst is obviously sort of gone. United, because quite frankly, it's weird because before last summer, United had loads of attackers. I bet some of them were injured. Cavani was there, Ronaldo was there, Greenwood. I mean, enough said, and so on. There was availability in our front line. Now, we haven't replaced any of them. We didn't replace Cavani when he left. And our replacement from Ronaldo was Weghorst, who's obviously going. Martial was kind of in and out. So I do think United need to bring in. If it was me, you get a Kane, and you would find an up and study. You'd find someone akin to, maybe someone like a Ferguson, for example, maybe from Brighton, who might be happy to be on the bench for United. I don't know, but someone else that can come in. Because as you rightly said, I think that Martial's injury record, we've seen, and we can't rely on him for the whole season. It just can't happen, Lastly, just looking at the poll, so thanks everyone who obviously voted in the poll. Obviously, who should own Manchester United? You have 77 votes from the community, so thank you so much. And it just seems to be an overwhelming. So if we're talking about fans, international fans, or whatever, it's overwhelming for Sheikh Jassim. 92% of these 77 votes voted for Sheikh Jassim to be the new owner of Manchester United, with only 8% voting Sir Jim, and others, which is the minorities there, others was none, So there's a clear indication that people want Qatar to be the Manchester United and carry Manchester United going forward. The question is whether the Glazers will at some point. But guys, we are rounding up. We're finishing. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming on. Make sure you follow him on Twitter as well at TomJournalist1. Hopefully, we'll get some breaking news towards the end of the week or the beginning. I mean, just as quick, are we? I know it's just I keep asking you a question, Tom, but when are we expecting to hear? Are we expecting something this week? Maybe beginning of next? When?
When is the problem? When is the question? But the problem is until the point is, if I had to project it now and I had to make a prediction, The Glazer family are looking at the options right now. When they are just looking at the options right now, they are not close to a final decision. They will, if I had to predict, I'd probably say via Wednesday, because the bids have already been in a week. You can say via Wednesday, then there's been 10 days, roughly, or just more than 10 days. 10 days is a long time. And you can look over all them options and all the numbers in 10 days. After that point, then you could say, well, via maybe the next Monday, a decision needs to have been made. And listen, we could be sitting here now and a decision might already be made, and it just might be really privately in the whole process. It's gone dark, it's gone to pitch black. And I said a couple of weeks ago, when these final bids go in, don't expect a lot of news, don't expect a lot of journalist presses coming out about Qatar or Shajim. Like, it's not going to happen. You're going to have a blackout. And you can say that's panic attacks, worry, people are going to have PTSD that Glazer are going to stay. Like, at the end of the day, when you come to numbers, because nobody knows the actual numbers, that's why it goes quiet. Because nobody knows the numbers. It's an NDA agreement for a reason. If you disclose the numbers, you're going to be sued. So at the end of the day, you can't disclose anything other than if you're in the process, what your plans are, and if you're going to actually do any public statements or not, in which Rain has advised all the groups, don't go public about anything. And a lot of them haven't gone public from their own delegations, but they've just leaked stuff out. It happens. You have leaks everywhere. Man United have leaks on the daily. Like, they got linked to, I think one point in time, Man United got linked to, was it 30 or 40 players in one day? Like, it was ridiculous at one point in time when Manchester United, and over a summer window, Man United get linked to hundreds of players. It happens. It's what happens with players at Manchester United. It happens with the Glazer family. It happens in everything, you know. And ultimately, it happens even at Old Trafford. You get leaking roof, you get leaking toilet. Like, leaks happen in all forms, shapes, and sizes. So at the end of the day, see it for what it is. But no, I'd expect probably something. If I had to predict anyway, a week maybe from now, I'd be shocked if there wasn't some sort of an announcement, whether it be publicly, privately, something's leaked or whatever. Like, there should be something. If not, then I would be concerned as to what the hell is going on, or has the process been dismantled? Is it going privately? What's going on? I would be very shocked.
Fair. Thanks. Right. Okay. Thanks, guys, so much. Thanks again, Tom, for coming on. Remember, guys, if you are new to channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter, Connect, and smash on the notification button. Plays Manchester United news. Hopefully, we'll be back again with some more insightful info regarding the sales process. And fingers crossed. #Qatar. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace.